Hello and welcome to the Meeting Tech Mastery Workshop. My name's Alec Johnson and I'm going to be your host for this week of weekly programming. And obviously this is in collaboration with Vivo Meetings right here on the Vivo Meetings channel. However, if you aren't already registered, then do note that there is a registration link in the description and also pinned in the chat as well. And by registering, you'll also get access to some downloads that I'm going to be sending out shortly. And also there is a bonus session that won't be here on YouTube, but will actually be in a Vivo meeting, and that will be this time next week, where we can have a bit of face-to-face conversation as well. So let me just start off by talking through what we've got coming up in the week ahead, and then I'll come and check in with everybody in the chat. But let's start off with taking a look then at the agenda for the week. So first of all, we're going to start off today with the video and lighting section, and these two things really are need to go hand in hand, because quite often the camera that you've got is not the most important thing. It's what you do with it in terms of lighting and positioning and all of that other stuff. So we'll be talking about that today. Tomorrow we'll then be moving on to audio, and I'll be talking about microphones, microphone technique and microphone choices, and some things that you might want to consider when you're looking to level up your audio in your online meetings. Then day 3, we're going to be talking about presentations and kind of thinking out of the box, really, where, getting away from just the idea of maybe presenting slides or things like that on screen, but rather thinking of a more immersive way that you can create presentations and actually present yourself and your information and present your value online in your online meetings and webinars. Day 4 then is going to be all about Vivo Meetings, the platform itself. I know from the signups that we've had to this event so far, lots of you are coming from Vivo Meetings, but also lots of you are coming from people within my existing circle who maybe are new to Vivo Meetings as well. Whether you are completely new to the platform or not, there'll be something for everyone in day 4 though, because I'll be talking about some of the new features that have been recently added, and also just taking a deep dive into some of the things that I personally really think set Vivo apart from some of the other platforms out there. So certainly there'll be, whether you are new to Vivo or not, there'll definitely be something for you in day 4. Day 5 is then going to be taking a look at live production and using live production techniques into your meetings. Everything that I'm going to do for the duration of this workshop, so what I'm doing right now with these graphics on screen, I'm doing all of this live. So I'm using various different techniques to do this, but basically I'm using live production software. So I'm sitting right here with a few Stream Decks. I'll talk about Stream Decks as we go through if you are not familiar with them. And then I've got some software running that is allowing me to switch between these different scenes and bring in different graphics and so on the screen. And this is all happening completely live. So the skills that you have from live streaming or the same skills that are needed for live streaming can just be applied into your meetings. And this is something that can be a total game changer when it comes to sort of setting yourself apart from the competition. First of all, there is always that. But more than that, it's about delivering your value. It's about allowing the tech to get out of the way so that you can just get across the message that you're trying to give, whether that is a sales call, an educational workshop that you're doing, or whatever it is. You've got some value to give, and the meeting platform is the your sort of window into that world. And so we just want to make that as simple as possible. And live production software is something that is very much underused, but has an amazing impact on everything that you can do online these days. So day 5, I'll be talking about that and talking about some of the techniques that you can use and some of the software and hardware that you can use to achieve this. There is also a bonus Q&A session as well. So obviously all of these things that we're doing right here are on YouTube, but there is a limitation of YouTube, which is that, I don't get to see all of your friendly faces except the little avatars in the chat. We don't get to have that sort of direct interaction. So day 6 is going to be this time on Monday, as I say, and that will be in a Vivo meeting. So if you're new to the platform, you'll get to experience the platform as well. But we'll also have a chance to see each other face to face, and you'll be able to get your questions answered if any further ones have arisen during the week. So in order to get access to that, you do need to go ahead and register if you're not already. So in terms of today then, what we're going to be doing is, as I say, we're going to be focused on the lighting and video. And we're going to start by talking a little bit about cameras. We're then going to move on to talking about the usage of cameras in terms of positioning and framing and so on. Then we're going to talk about lighting, and specifically 3-point lighting, which I'll explain all about what that is. And then talking about lighting control and how you can sort of shape the environment that you're in using different techniques as well. Next up, we'll talk about building out a studio. Now, this may seem a bit of a leap, and maybe a little bit of a leap too far for many. I'm going to assume in all that I'm talking about today, because I know that there are folks who are familiar with my work on my channel, Take One Tech, where I talk about all of this kind of stuff. If you look at my studio, it's maybe a little bit overkill for just a regular meeting. However, there is an advantage to having this sort of setup. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from first principles and assume that folks are currently just using a webcam, a built-in microphone on their laptop. So I'm not necessarily going to be just jumping straight into all of this. However, I do think it's worth mentioning the benefit of having some sort of dedicated space if you are using these platforms for business, if it is a revenue-generating enterprise that you've got going on and that you are looking to sort of level up your online presence because of that, then certainly a small investment relatively in a dedicated space can be something that can make a huge difference to your overall workflow and efficiency, and just the effect and the results that you're going to get. So with that said, before I actually get into the content, I do just want to say a quick hello to everyone who's popped in. Thanks for stopping by from Texas. Great to see you here. Hello, Mike. Great to see you too. East coast of Canada. Incidentally, for those that don't know, I'm in the northeast of Thailand. I'm from the UK originally, as you may gather by the accent, but I've been here in Thailand for the past 17 years. One of the things, incidentally, that I love about this whole way of working online with online meeting platforms and live production software is you really can be anywhere in the world and you can run your business just like this and have really great conversations with folks from all around the world. So it's always great to see where folks are coming in from. Hey, William, great to see you too. And Esther, Shahar, great to see you as well. And George, a familiar face. So I'm seeing familiar faces as well as new faces as well. Hey, Jeff, great to see you as well. And Rich Graham, of course, from Texas. Brian from Toronto. Hey, Brian. Gary Barkley from Southwest Florida. And we've got Dan in as well from Canada. Great to see so many familiar faces. And Russell's here as well. Great to see Russell from Vancouver too. Okay, so let's crack on then, and I'll start with, I've got to say a quick hello to Chris as well. Chris from UK. A global audience today. Awesome stuff. So, let's start then with the conversation of cameras. And really, there is, a lot of talk over, which camera is best, certainly in some of the circles that I move in, which are more from the sort of content creator circles, where, I have a YouTube channel. So a lot of the gear that I acquired was originally for creating my YouTube content. However, I've then started to realize the benefit of it in all other areas of business too. You will find that there are people who fall into very specific camps when it comes to cameras, specifically in the creator community. Some people all in on Sony, Canon, Nikon, whatever it happens to be. The fact is, these days, all of these cameras do an awesome job. And when we're talking about from a point of view of leveling up your online meetings, the gains in some of these things are really marginal. So I personally, although if you want to know, I've got a Sony ZV-E10. That's what I'm talking into here, with a Sigma 20 lens, or Sigma 30 lens, I should say. However, I wouldn't necessarily get bogged down in all of that. What is more important, actually, is how you use it. And in fact, the first, year that I was on YouTube, so that was, 2 years ago now, ending off 2 years ago, and indeed in all of my meetings, I was actually using a 10-year-old Canon camera with a stock lens. So it, although it was significantly better than a built-in webcam, you don't necessarily need to have the latest and greatest if you just want to level up your online meetings, which of course is what this workshop is all about. I will also say that does seem to be a really sort of new wave of really great USB cameras coming in these days. So there is another camera. I'll just, having said I'm not going to specifically recommend cameras, I will just show you a few that I've been testing out myself recently, because it just sort of shows that you don't need to have a DSLR, a mirrorless, some sort of large camera that we're going to be using as a webcam, even though it is a sort of traditional photography video camera, but you can get some great cameras these days, such as this one. So the OBSBot Tiny 2 is a 4K little webcam. It's got some great features. In fact, if I flick over to here, it's got some great little features in terms of it does little AI tracking and things like that. So you could have this, on the desk in your meeting room and actually have it tracking you around and things like that as you're moving. And there is something to be said for, choosing a camera other than your webcam. And it's not just about the quality, because these days the quality of webcams that are built into your laptop maybe are also great. One of the problems that we're trying to solve with that, though, is you're very limited in terms of the way that you can frame yourself up. So if I was to switch over to the webcam on my MacBook right now, here it is. This is not necessarily the most flattering look in any case. Got a bit of the double chins going on there. But also, aside from that, it's just not the best sort of framing. And we'll talk about framing in a moment as well. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look to have sort of more control over these sorts of things. So that was just like one little one that I've been trying out. I'm also trying out another camera, incidentally, by the same company, which is the OBSBot Tail Air, which also does 3D tracking. This one's got a really large sensor in it, so it's going to give you really high quality 4K imagery out of it. And incidentally, that is this camera that I'm looking at over here. So all of this to say that these are just sort of a new wave of cameras that are coming out these days that have got really great sensors in them. And so, I can certainly give you a recommendation of some of the things that I'm using. But that said, anything that you're using that's got a reasonably good sensor in it these days from a meeting point of view is going to really help to sort of set you apart anyway. And what is more important is, in fact, the sort of framing that you're going to be doing with these cameras and the sort of positioning of them. One other thing, incidentally, which I'm not going to talk about too much today, but I will talk about later on in the week, is also the use of teleprompters. I'll just sort of touch on this, though, which is that right in front of me at the moment here, I've got a number of screens, but this one here actually is where my camera is. So my camera is currently sort of behind this screen. The screen itself is down here. And then I'm looking at a reflection of the screen in a sort of glass front to this teleprompter. And what that means is that when I'm on calls with people, I'm looking directly through the lens, or through the glass rather, through the screen almost, at the person on the other side. So whilst we're in a Zoom call, whilst we're in a Vivo meeting call, Freudian slip, then I'm actually looking at the person as they're looking back at me on the screen. And it makes a huge difference to have that eye contact with people. When you are in meetings. And it's actually one of the things that gets commented about most with me personally when I am in meetings with people. Sometimes they'll just say, where exactly are you looking? It's kind of like a weird question, but they can't quite figure out how it is that I seem to be maintaining eye contact even when we're on a call, because people are so used to people just being looking down away from the camera, looking away from wherever the camera is, and not having that eye contact. So having a teleprompter is actually one of the biggest things you can do to really level up and improve your engagement in your online meetings. That's very difficult to do if you're using your built-in webcam on your MacBook or your laptop or whatever it happens to be, however good the camera is. So that's another reason that we may want to sort of look to move our camera away from being attached to the device that we're on currently. So let's talk then a little bit about camera positioning, though. And this is something that's, to be aware of. I mean, if I just flick back to this one, you can see that this is not a natural shot. You wouldn't normally be in a meeting with someone where they're looking at you at this angle, even if you are maintaining eye contact. This looks like I'm kind of looking down at you. So what we want to do is we want to try and have something that looks natural. And this looks far more natural to be sitting face to face with somebody and having that conversation. But there again, there is the position of you on the screen. So if you are sort of down here somewhere, it looks a little bit odd. It always looks like that somebody's trying to sort of peer over the top of something. It almost looks like, makes you look a little bit more childlike. But I think that there seems to be this natural inclination of people to think, I need to have my eyes on the center line. In actual fact, that's not quite the case. There is a better place to put your eyes, and there is a rule in photography called the rule of thirds. And there is a great little overlay created, and I've got to give full credit to Chris Fenwick from Office Hours for creating this little thing, the Fenwick overlay. And this is basically when you're thinking about your position on screen. You don't need to obviously have this physically on the screen for you to use it, but as long as you have this sort of visual idea in your head, splitting the screen into thirds, in the horizontal and vertical, and then having your eyes on this sort of top third. That is going to give you a much more sort of natural look on screen. In terms of exactly how big you are on the screen, that's something that's down to personal preference, but certainly aim to have your eyes there, and it's going to look a lot more natural on screen. And as I say, if you compare this to something like this, then it looks a lot less natural to be sort of down here. You can also use that same framing principle. So the rule of thirds applies not just to the vertical plane, but also to the horizontal. If you were doing something like an interview style thing where you are over onto the eye line on the top third, and then also over to the third, over to one side of another. You'll see this all the time if you're aware of it when you see people being interviewed on the news or on the TV or whatever. It's just such a common thing that they do, is just to use this particular rule. So the same should go for your online meetings. It's very easy to just sort of adjust yourself, even if you are using a laptop webcam and you don't have a separate camera. Just consider getting some sort of riser to rise it up, just so that the camera is more or less at eye level, and obviously you are just sort of framed in this way. It's going to make you look a lot more sort of natural on screen, and that's all we're trying to do really, is just trying to improve the experience that people have when they are talking to you. So with that said, let's just go to the next section, because I'm going to move on now to lighting, and this is really the most important when it comes to the camera choice. That's one thing. When it comes to the lens, you get some cameras that have got fixed lenses, other ones that have interchangeable lenses, so you can choose something. And incidentally, if you've got a camera or if you get a camera that does give you the option to change the lenses, usually it is the lens that is making the quality more so than the camera. Not directly, but just as a general rule, if you've got a really, really great camera but with a poor quality lens, then you're not going to get the best images out of it. However, a really great quality lens can improve, a lower end camera. So my Sony camera, for example, is by no stretch, a highly expensive camera, around about $600 or $700, I think, at the time. But the lens just improved the image quality over the stock lens that came with it. But what can have more impact, though, as I say, is the lighting. So if I just pop over here for a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this really standard lighting setup, and it's called 3-point lighting because you guessed it, there are 3 different light sources that we're going to be talking about. So what I've done is I've created this little diagram which should help explain this. And obviously 3-point lighting is something, again, industry standard, used in all sorts of different scenarios. But for our scenario, we are essentially sitting here at our desk, and we are going to be joining our meeting, and we're looking to try and improve our lighting. I'll just quickly say, before we get into this level of detail, it goes without saying, making sure that you are at least illuminated in some way, even if you don't have a 3-point lighting setup, but having some way of making sure that you've got good light on the front of you, rather than sitting, at a laptop in the corner with a bright light source behind you, maybe a window or maybe a ceiling light or something like that. It's not going to give a great effect. It's going to make the background look more washed out. You're going to seem dark in the foreground. And so, you want to make sure, whatever, you are illuminated. But what I'm going to talk about here, though, is the best sort of approach that you can take with this. So imagine that you've got your camera in front of you there, and I've done it as a separate camera, your laptop maybe on your desk, your screen on your desk. You've got the camera there positioned somewhere in front of you. And then we've got the back wall behind us. And I've put that on just to illustrate a few other things a little bit later. But you're sitting there at your desk with the camera in front of you. And you've got this field of view of the camera. So that is what is actually being seen by the camera. So 3-point lighting works a little bit something like this. First of all, you may well have some sort of practical lights. So any other lights that are going on in the background, those do not count in this sense. They're just there to potentially make things look pretty. But the actual 3 points that we're talking about, first of all, you have what is called the key light. That is the primary light that you are having to illuminate your face, illuminate yourself. Next, you have one called the fill light. And the purpose of the fill light is to fill in the shadows that would otherwise be on the other side of your face. Now, what I can do is I can actually switch off some of my lights just now. So first of all, here is just the key light. So this is the strongest light that I've got going on. And incidentally, if I just sort of flick over to here, I can show you this. So here is my setup. And if I just switch over to here, I can show you that these are the lights. So up there, that is the key light. And this one down here is over this side rather, is the fill light. And if I just switch back to here for a second, then you can see that it is, really dark over on this side and light on this side. But if I switch the fill light on, that has now filled out that side. It isn't quite as intense as the light on the other side though. So you'll notice that it is still slightly darker, but it has just made sure that I am still well illuminated. Now, there are all kinds of different ways that you can adjust these to have, a more moody look or whatever. But we're talking about meetings here, so I'm not going to go with a super dark, moody look on my business meetings. But certainly, this is just, as I say, a sort of industry standard. More in TVs, if people are on, the news, for example, they would tend to have a more sort of flat lighting with equal on either side. But whatever the case, this is the two that we've talked about now, is the key light and then the fill light over on the other side. Just going back then to that diagram, that we've got the key light and the fill light. The other one that we have is somewhat frustratingly called the hair light, but I like to call it the backlight for obvious reasons. And if I just show you what this does, the idea about this is that it's just going to give you some separation from the background. And it's only really very subtle, but if I turn it on, you can see that it's just still illuminating slightly at the back and also very slightly on the back of my shoulder as well. It's perhaps a little bit less pronounced here. I've specifically done it so that it's not so bright, just because I've already got pretty good separation between me and the background due to the fact that the background is considerably darker and just has that colored light on it. So it's not so necessary. And if I was to turn this up too much, if I come over to this particular light, if I was to turn this up too much, I have not got a head for the hair light because it becomes a little bit shiny. But in any case, this principle of these three lights is something that you can use. And incidentally, yes, if you've got a sort of light background, then really it's only sort of the front lights that are the most important to make sure that you are illuminated when it comes to your meetings. Let me just switch over to the chat just one second. Before I go on any further, I just want to check in because there's a couple of other people popped in, so I want to make sure I'm saying hello to new folks here. Hello, Don from SC. I'm not sure what the SC is short for, actually. Hey, Peter, great to see you from Hungary. Hello from Hamburg, Germany as well. Great to see you too. A lot of people, when I do my consulting, is they don't use their cameras, so I turn mine off, which is a shame because I have good equipment and I never use it. That is a shame, actually. If people are on calls and don't come on camera, yeah, that becomes it's more like a telephone call. It's such a missed opportunity on their part not to make that connection, really. So yeah, that is a real shame. And some turn their cameras off because of their background. Yes, totally. So the work from home, the thing that's happened during, what was it? A slight pandemic for 3 years. Yeah, there was a lot of people that were in a situation, they were suddenly at home, maybe not in a dedicated space and maybe, didn't want people to be distracted by the background and things like that. So yeah, that is certainly a reason to do that. So let's jump in and keep going through the 3-point lighting diagram that I was just showing there, though. Let me just pop this off the screen. So if you just had a single light source, though, in front of you with no control over the light whatsoever, you could end up with really harsh lighting. And I showed you there just, the way that I can sort of tune it in and dial in some of the lighting and the difference it made, when I made this one a lot harsher behind me, the hair light, the backlight. It did have, an impact there on the skin tones and things like that. And so we want to be able to control that in some way. And so there are a number of ways then that you can do that. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about then is the diffuser that you can add to a light. So if you've just got a pinpoint source of light, it's going to be a very harsh light. If you just had a bulb, this is obviously why we put lampshades on bulbs, to sort of soften the effect of them. And if we come back here, then you can put some sort of diffusion on the light bulb. And what that does is it makes the light appear effectively as if it is larger than it really is. So if I just come over to this view here, you can see, relative to me, this is actually a huge light. I mean, it's 3 foot across, 90 centimeters across. The actual source of light behind there, though, is considerably smaller. It is a video light, so it's specifically made for video and photography. It's a 60-watt light, although I'm using it basically at just about half power at the moment, but it is coming through this big diffuser here. The reason for the diffuser is it gives a much softer light. So if I was sitting there with a 60-watt bulb just a few feet away from me, you can imagine the glare and how that would actually sort of fall onto my face. However, because I've got that big diffuser, it really softens the light considerably. Now, that's not to say that I'm recommending that everybody go and get these large lights to put on their office desk, in their co-working space or whatever. However, even if you are restricted in space, there are certainly still other options that you can opt for. So something like this, and there are many other brands available, but this is the Elgato. They make a range of products for live streamers, essentially. However, they are great for meeting purposes as well. So these are flat panel lights. They are low profile, so you can have them sort of mounted to your desk, something like that. This one's directly in front. You could have one either side to get this key light and the fill light. You can see, though, that although it is a flat panel, it is a large sort of area. So it's a low-powered light, but it's a large area. So you've got this same effect of the, rather than the harsh single point of light, it's going to give you a bit more of a softer lighting effect. And as you can see, it sort of mounts there behind the monitor, just clamps onto the desk, comes up, and then you could have a light on either side. And it's really going to make a huge difference to the way that you appear on screen. And that's whatever camera that you happen to be using. So if I come back over to here for a second, that is the diffusion then that we are going to want to have on any light source that we are using. Incidentally, I've mentioned the Elgato lights there. I've also mentioned the lights that I'm using, the Nun lights. I'll be sending out a list with all of the gear that I've used and recommend in due course as well. However, you don't necessarily need to go out and buy all of this. From a point of view of just wanting to level up on your online meetings, you could certainly just use a regular household lamp, but just be mindful of, the power of the bulb that you're using and how you are sort of shading that, how you are looking to add some sort of diffusion to that so that it's not too harsh on you. So all of these principles can be applied, at whatever level, whether you're investing in, full video lighting or at any stage in between. And in fact, the document that I'll be sending out will have sort of 3 different levels of gear. So one at the sort of higher end, the mid tier, and then some other options there for some lower tier items that you can get that can still give a similar effect. The next thing then that we can have, because if you notice on that previous one, where we've got the diffusion, although it is sort of diffusing the light is still spilling out everywhere. And so what we want to do from a video point of view is look to have a little bit more control over the light. So if I just go back to my main camera here, what you'll see is that I am very well illuminated, but everything in the back looks a little bit dark. Now, for me, that is intentional. You may not want to do that on your meetings. Certainly, this look does not necessarily suit all business meetings. It happens to be what I use for my online streaming, my online education business. However, I do understand that, colorful backgrounds like this are not necessarily for everyone in their meetings. But what I am doing, though, is I am controlling the light that's coming out of this main light here and the light on the other side and preventing it from hitting that back wall so that then I can do what I want with that. And in this case, I've got some colored lights there behind me that are adding that color to the side. There's another couple that are off to the side as well. and they're adding the further light onto the back wall. So the point is, if you want to really sort of craft your on-screen environment, then you can do that with light, and it's all down to lighting control. So if I come back to this here, the type of diffuser I've got, rather than being a sort of large sort of bulb, if you like, around, or a lantern around the bulb to sort of dissipate that light evenly all around, what I've actually got is something that looks more like this. You can see this here if I switch over to this view here, or maybe this one. You can see how these are sort of dome-shaped lights. So the front is flat, but behind that is more of a dome shape. And that is because it's directing that light specifically down in this direction, much like you would with a sort of flashlight, pointing all of the light forward. So that's what's going on with these lights. You can actually control this light even further, though, by adding on what they call a grid. And that is something that sits over the front of the light, and it focuses that light in even more. So if I just flick back to this view again, you can see that there is this grid on the front of here. If I move it up like this, this is just a sort of little grid or a crate on the front. And what that's doing is that's directing that light in. In fact, this light here has one of those on as well. And you almost can't see the light coming out of it because this camera over here is positioned to the side. That's why you're not actually seeing the grid that is on the front of that light just up there. So by doing that then, we have then sort of focused the key light directly onto me. Next, we have also focused the fill light, and that is then directed onto the other side as well. And we can do exactly the same with that backlight. And incidentally, if I just come over to this view, you'll see here, although that camera's a little bit out of focus, there is the fill light, the backlight up there, and that is just shining down from this side. But that also has a similar grid on the front of it. So all of these do. So I'm very much sort of controlling the direction that light is going in. So then you'll notice then that if you look back at the field of view, and you can see where the camera is pointing there, that is what it is seeing on the back wall. It's seeing those little sort of practical lights down there at the bottom left. It's also seeing the light over on the bottom right in this picture. But the light from the light beams, if you like, from the key light and fill light is completely missing that back wall. And as I say, in my case, that is what gives this sort of this depth to the coloured light on the back. Otherwise, it would just be a little bit washed out. So as I say, these principles, whether or not you're applying these to a full studio setup, or you're just applying them to a regular sort of meeting space, meeting setup, I think that it is worthwhile to invest a little bit of time in considering the way that your lighting is set up, so that you can it just improve the way that you are showing up in your online meetings. In terms of the other things related to the cameras that I was talking about, I will just talk about a studio setup, because one of the things that I found when I was first found myself in a situation of suddenly working from home during the pandemic a lot more than I had been, was needing to do a lot more things online, and certainly having a dedicated space meant that it was just a lot easier for me to sort of come in and first of all create video content, which is something else that I do, but also to really present much better in my online presentations, in my online meetings. And so I do think that it's an underestimated investment to have, or the benefit of the investment is vastly underestimated. I often use the sort of analogy that it's funny that during the pandemic, how all of these people who would have previously spent large sums of money on investing in maybe their clothing, their attire, their things like that, or maybe even just their offices and so on. And yet these same people were not looking to invest anything in the way that they were showing up in their online meetings. And so it's just one of these things that when you take into account, the cost of a relatively decent camera, a relatively decent lighting setup, something like that. It's not actually going into large sums of money. But these small things that you can do can really make a massive difference. So I highly recommend that. For folks that have not done anything with their online setup, it's definitely something that's worthwhile doing. I'd love to get some feedback from the comments and from the viewers here, because it's hard to sort of gauge where to go with something like this when there is a sort of broad spectrum. I know from looking in the comments there are some seasoned live streamers, seasoned veterans from the Ecamm Live community, which is a community that I move in a lot. But it'd be great to know of everyone that's in here. What are you currently doing with your setup at the moment? And what is everybody's setup? Have you got a dedicated space that you're working from? Are you somebody who's on the move and you need something that's mobile? Do you have a separate camera or a dedicated camera that you're using for your meetings, or are you just using the built-in camera? It'd be great to get a little bit of feedback so that I can, as we go forward, understand a little bit more about sort of positioning and the depth to go into with this, because it's always something that is a little bit challenging. So it'd be great to hear from any of you in the chat what you feel about that. We'll just talk about teleprompters again a little bit, though, because it is worth mentioning, and something else that's not really related to cameras, but I would just also add that you can never have too many monitors, as I've found out. So when it comes to presenting, we'll talk about presentations on day 3 specifically, but being able to sort of pull up the information and have it all to hand, having some extra real estate always goes a long way. So let me just see where we're up to with the chat. Full studio, 30 by 20, 45 cams. Okay, that's you're not short of a camera or two there. Oh, 5 cameras. Okay, that's still great going. It's amazing how much difference that can make, though. Just having like the odd additional camera, not necessarily 5. I mean, however many you've got, but adding in a second camera can come in really handy. You know, it might even just be having a top-down camera that you want to show what you're working on, or have a document you want to share. I was speaking with a coaching client just the other day who uses their top-down camera. They literally sort of take notes or draw on the screen, or draw on their notepad, and have a top-down camera that can capture that. Showing different angles and things like that can also be useful in many cases. Hey Jane, great to see you here as well. Thank you very much for stopping by. A dedicated space with USB cameras and trying to figure out teleprompter without an expensive camera. One good light and a backdrop. Great to hear. So in terms of the teleprompter, the new Elgato prompter, by all accounts, has got great reviews. And I don't know if you've heard of that one yet. Again, I'm not sure of the folks in here, whether folks are, are up on Elgato. Elgato makes, for me, one of the best productivity devices in the world, which is the Stream Deck. I've got 3 of them on the desk, and I've got 2 down on the floor, 2 of their foot pedals. So Elgato make great streaming equipment, but they just recently launched their own prompter. And this could be the prompter to kill all prompters, to be honest with you, because if I just try and find it for you on their website, because first of all, it doesn't need to work with, it can work with lower cost cameras as well. And Jane, yes, it is back ordered till March. That's right. So you are familiar with it. But yes, this is a great teleprompter. And incidentally, this picture, for those that aren't familiar with teleprompters, it shows sort of how these things work. So basically, you have a screen that is on the horizontal plane. You've got a sort of screen or glass at 45 degrees there that has the camera behind it. And then when you look into the camera, you're actually looking down at the reflection of what is on the screen. And because the camera is completely enclosed in the housing there, then inside of that is dark. And so the camera doesn't see the reflection of the content on the screen. But you are looking directly into the camera, so it sees you, and you are looking at what is on this screen. What makes this really quite a great product is it is an all-in-one thing. So you're buying the glass here, and you're also buying the monitor, and it just plugs in over a single cable. You can buy, this is their own face cam, which is Elgato's 4K camera. You can use it with other cameras as well. But it's got some interesting features. So just to mention, obviously teleprompters are originally intended for, newsreaders or whatever to be looking into the camera and reading a script, or, folks on TV. So normally these would work where all it has on the screen is a scrolling text. However, what we're using them for in this context is that we want to just be able to see other people. In this case, what I'm doing is, if I just flick this over here, move that back there, camera's a little bit out of focus, but right here at the moment, I'm looking at myself in there because I want to be able to see what's going out onto this live stream. But in a meeting context, the way that I use this is I would have my guest would be in the meeting up here. I would have the gallery view down here. If they're sharing screen, I would have that down there. But I'm essentially looking into the teleprompter. What the Elgato prompter, though, allows you to do is it does actually allow you to sort of load in your script if you want to have a script. Maybe in a meeting you want to have bullet points that you want to go through. Maybe you're doing a pitch or a presentation, or you're an educator and you're using meetings for that. Then it allows you to load in your script, and so you can then bring that up onto the screen as well as an overlay over the top of the content. Or you can just switch into the script. You can read your script. And incidentally, if you've got a Stream Deck, you can control the movement of that with your Stream Deck. And then after that, you can switch back out and go to watch the meeting or whatever it happens to be. Incidentally, on Elgato's website, on their demo, they also showed that you could potentially be watching something else and make it look like you were paying attention in meetings. That was a very irresponsible thing to do. But anyway, they did nevertheless show that in there. But yeah, this is a great solution. What I'm using for a teleprompter is actually you have to buy sort of two separate things. In fact, most of them do. You buy the teleprompter and then you need to use some sort of device, some sort of screen monitor for the actual monitor part. So here we've got, this is a Lilliput 12-inch screen that I've got down there, and then the teleprompter is behind it. One thing you need to be aware of if you're going to be sort of buying these things separately is to just make sure that whatever monitor that you've got has the ability to flip the image. Because you are looking at it essentially in a mirror, it will be reversed. And so any sort of typical computer monitor, however big or small, is not necessarily going to work for it, because those don't generally have the ability to flip the image. You can sometimes use iPads. There is some software that you can use to sort of flip the image on the iPad. But yeah, those are sort of hit and miss. And then you get into a situation where your iPad is tied up on your teleprompter. The way to do this, and the way that a lot of people do it, is they will buy what they call a field monitor. So it is a more like something that you're going to use to monitor the output from a camera or video camera or something like that. But those have a feature built in which allows you to flip the image. So Lilliput is the brand that I'm using, and that has this sort of image flip capability built into it. But from a point of view of a sort of tech consultant or tech coach, I do find that this is something that is a bit of a sticking point for people, because it becomes then that I'm sort of having to explain all of this and tell them about the various different teleprompters that are available, the various different monitors that are available, the different price points, because those do vary wildly. Whereas, yeah, certainly Elgato seems to have hit the nail on the head with this particular product. If only they can, ship it on time, because it has just been quite on back order. It's been a very popular device by all accounts. Hey Rich, dedicated space, Sony ZV-1 with a Glide Gear prompter and lights. Glide Gear is a great brand of teleprompter as well. So yeah, that's another very popular brand there as well. Wearing glasses, I often have issues with the reflections. The thing to note about that And incidentally, just got your prompter today. Congratulations. I'm surprised you're here and not playing with it because I would be. I'm a bit of a tech nerd like that, though. Wearing glasses, though, this is a common problem that folks have. So I mentioned about, obviously, the lights being on either side of me. And in that diagram, they're kind of like at 45 degrees out. What that doesn't show is the elevation as well. So they are kind of elevated above me. So if I sort of put my arm out level, it is up at a sort of 30 degree or 20 degree angle, I guess, above me that way. And so all you need to sort of think about is where the camera is, and then imagine sort of like ray tracing from the light source and where that would bounce off from your glasses. So if the lights were more at sort of eye level, and then your camera is here, then it's going to sort of bounce back and into there, and so you would see the reflections a little bit more of the lights. It is a bit of a tough one, though. It just requires just a little bit of trial and error to try and eliminate that. The funniest one I saw, and I always mention this because it just cracked me up at the time, was a chap in the Ecamm community, and he was doing a demo, and somebody said, "How do you avoid the glare on your glasses?" He took his glasses off and poked his finger through them because there were no lenses in them. So that is an extreme case. He had corrective surgery, but he kept the glasses because they were part of his brand. That was genius. My American morning. Hello, welcome to you. I've ordered the Elgato prompter, just received the Facecam Pro and the Stream Deck Plus. I'm an old guy who is brand new to all this stuff. It's just for fun for me. South Carolina. There we go. I have a use for all this, but I also absolutely love it. I'm like a kid at Christmas when any of these new gadgets hits my desk. So the Stream Deck Plus, incidentally, is a great device. Since you mention it, and since there may be folks who are unfamiliar with them, I will just talk about these different devices momentarily as well. So on my desk, I've got here, this is the Stream Deck XL, and this is the Stream Deck Plus. What these are is essentially, to all intents and purposes, they are a keyboard. So they plug into your computer over USB, and you can see they've got a series of keys on them. What they do differently, though, to a regular keyboard is you can assign any any action you want to these buttons, and also these buttons can change. So although this one has got 32 keys, I can sort of switch to a different profile, have a completely different set of buttons on here. I won't do that right now, though, because I'm in the middle of doing this. But all of these buttons here at the moment are controlling different things. So if I was to press this button, for example, it would switch back to this view of me front on. If I was to press this button, it would switch back there. I've got various different buttons like that one to control basically what's going on in my live production. The Stream Deck was conceived as a way to control live streams, hence the name Stream Deck. However, once I got one, I realized that it was a total productivity powerhouse, and it is possibly, for me, the ultimate productivity tool. You can do all kinds of things. It's not just for live streaming. And so I'll give you some examples of some of the things that I do with it. So first of all, you can have a whole series of actions chained together, multi-actions. So for example, if I want to start doing a particular task that I do repetitively, then I could press a button and it might well open up my Mail app, maybe open up Safari to a particular link, maybe even log into a particular website, maybe open up some other apps or files or folders, and then also in conjunction with some other apps that I use, such as Moom on the Mac, which does window management, so it positions windows in exactly the right place or the places where I want to put them. With one push of a button, I can basically have my entire desktop set up and ready to work for a particular work mode. I can then press another button and it would close all of that down and open up a completely different set of applications ready to move into another work mode. All of that little thing is really going to help to reduce friction when you're getting into working. And the idea of having everything in exactly the same place every time, using Stream Deck in conjunction with Moom, I always liken this to imagine getting into a car and everything in the car, all the controls being in different places every time. You need to have some sort of consistency in terms of when you're sitting in your desk, when you're working, having everything in its place and knowing where to go, having that muscle memory to be able to work efficiently. And the Stream Deck for me has just really enabled that far more than any other tool that I've ever used. So that is the Stream Deck XL, and I've got two of those here, but this one in the middle, though, differs slightly. This is the Stream Deck Plus, and the difference between these is that this does have buttons in exactly the same as this does, but it also has these little dials. So this allows you to control things that you might want to control sort of incrementally, maybe volume control. If you use Photoshop or something like that, it could be brush size, and maybe you're doing editing, you want to sort of scrub through things. So the Stream Deck Plus is great. I mentioned before that you're not limited to the number of buttons on the device. You can have multiple different profiles, they call them. So it's different collections of groups, different collections of actions, different use cases. And I have several ones of these. And what you can actually do is, if you've got multiple Stream Decks, then you can use one to change what's going on the other. So, I've got some controls over here, but if I was to press this button, it would change to a completely different set of controls. And so you can sort of use one to control another as well. I mentioned foot pedals, so I've also got some foot pedals on the floor that I use for in meetings, if I want to sort of quickly mute, unmute. Sometimes I'm using those in other tasks that I'm doing on my computer. Maybe I'm doing something in Excel where I'm got two hands on the keyboard, but I want to be able to control some other things. Then I use those as well. So yeah, really the Stream Decks are a massively, I think, underused device, because they tend to have been popularized with streamers and with content creators, but still, there are a lot of people outside of that world who maybe aren't familiar with them. And when it comes to meetings, as we'll talk about a little bit later in the week, when we start talking about using live production software, combining that maybe with Keynote or PowerPoint, and you're sort of combining live production software with presentation software, also with Vivo Meetings, and you want to sort of unite all of that stuff, the Stream Deck kind of becomes your mission control to control all of that. So it's a great device, and as I say, really underutilized, I would say. Hello there, Anki, am I saying that correct? Doing trainings using Ecamm Live. Oh, an Ecamm user, great to see you here. The new Elgato Prompter, 3 Stream Decks. I'm in a tiny space with a green screen behind me. Any recommendations for light on the green screen? Actually, that is the key. What you've said there is having the green screen lit. So you can achieve any kind of look that you want to achieve with a regular background technically can be done with a green screen as well. And a lot of people think that, and there's certain people who are proponents of this, that you just need to flood everything with light. And so they'll have really big lights right in front of them that are then actually just causing them to be washed out. You still want to be controlling the light on yourself. However, what you've said there about lighting the green screen, that is the key, really. It's trying to get an even light on the green screen. So the computer is essentially, the software is essentially, trying to pick out where you finish and where the green starts, and also trying to pick out, what is green and where is it, maybe fading off into a different color or whatever. So if you are using a green screen, I've got a sort of pop-up green screen just down here on the floor that pops up. And so that's got really the way that works. And I'll just show you the, it's another Elgato product. They make a lot of streaming products, a lot of video products. What can I say? Let me just show you this though. This is the sort of thing I'm talking about. And this is kind of a bit like those pop-up signs that you get at conferences, signage and so on, and it sort of just rolls down into the floor there. But then when you want it, it just sort of pops up, and there's a stand sort of behind it that holds it up. The screen itself, though, as you can see, once it's rolled up, is a really sort of flat surface. There's no wrinkles or anything like that on it. I did actually have, in my first studio space before I moved into this one, I did have a sort of homemade green screen where I'd bought the material and then I had a frame that I'd sort of stretched it over. But I've seen people with green screens where they're using more like sort of green screen curtains or something like that. And so there's naturally going to be shadows and so on in there. And all we need to do is try and eliminate as much of that shadow as possible. So making sure that depending on what type of green screen you've got, it is sort of completely tight and a nice flat surface, but then trying to make sure that it is well illuminated. Now, if you've got sort of 3-point lighting going on in front of you, then there will be a natural tendency for there to be shadows of you cast on the green screen. And so that will cause issues with the keying out of the green, as they call it. So the green screen key, where the computer's trying to figure out, what is green and what isn't. And so having lights that are behind you, or at least illuminating the green screen behind you, is going to really help with that. But you want to try and stop the spill of that light coming back onto you. So when I have my green screen up, I do actually have some pretty powerful lights that are on the side that are projecting back, and in just exactly the same way as in the studio setup. Coming back to this one, in exactly the same way as I'm controlling the light coming out of here, the same thing goes for the green screen. I'm therefore controlling the light so that it isn't spilling on me, but is going onto the back of the green screen. You mentioned that you're in a small studio space. The bigger the distance you can put behind you to a certain extent, the better. If it's small, if you can get to that as far as possible in the context of a small space. 600 meters behind you is not good, but the other thing that you can do that can be quite effective if you are in a small space is actually putting some sort of light behind your chair, so that it is distinctly sort of illuminating the back of sort of behind you, illuminating the screen behind you. What I did in my previous space as well was I actually had, because that was limited in terms of the sort of depth. I had a strip light that was running all the way along the floor just in front of the green screen to sort of illuminate it up from the bottom. And that sort of had a sort of slight effect of sort of bouncing off the roof and also off my shoulders to give that separation. One thing I will say is that I am somewhat blessed in that I've got a head for green screen. Green screen effect doesn't always like hair. That is going to be the tricky part, is where it's got to try and make out the individual sort of strands of hair. So that can be a bit of a trick at sometimes. But there we go. Let's have a look. So I hope that helps. But I haven't actually got myself set up for my green screen at the moment because I've been doing some other changes in my studio. So I didn't get myself set up for green screen. But maybe what I'll do is I'll perhaps just demo that on one of the other days because, I can sort of show you the effect of that. But actually, if you've got a well-lit green screen, you could have something, really dark in the front if you wanted. I mean, you've seen all sorts of movies where there are, really dark scenes in there that have been done on green screen. So, you don't need to flood yourself with light. But that teleprompter is the one that I've got. I can never pronounce it. I Lockenzie or something like that. The Lilliput I think I've got the A12, but it's the same thing. Michael, hello, great to see you here. Another familiar name. So I'm not got myself set up for that right now because I've taken my lights. I've been working on a separate set that's over on that side with a camera over on this side in the last few days. So I actually removed my green screen lights for that, but I will do it in one of the other days this week. I'll circle back to that. Oh, great! I'm glad you like the lessons. But yes, the haircut is not for everyone. So there we go. If anybody's got any questions related to this or any further questions or comments, let me know. We're just coming up to the top of the hour. I was going to keep these to between an hour and 90 minutes, but honestly, I've run a little bit early today, so I'll have to make up for it later in the week. But if anyone's got any questions or comments, either in the live chat or if you are watching on the replay, of course, go ahead and drop those into the comments as well. I'll certainly be checking on those. And what I'll be doing is also, as I say, sending out the PDF to accompany all of these sessions. So if you haven't done it already, do go ahead and register. You'll find that link down in the description. You'll also find it pinned to the top of the chat if you are in the chat right now. And then later on this week, we'll be covering more of this, and I will come back to the green screen question. So I'll cover that in one of the other sessions and get that all set up to demonstrate how that works and maybe get a bit of a better view of to be able to show you all of that. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about audio because talking about obviously cameras and lighting today, that's sort of one component, but the audio is obviously a massive thing. Now, this is quite an intrusive thing on the screen for a lot of people. I know that folks don't necessarily like to have a microphone in shot, so we're talking about some other options where that is concerned tomorrow as well. And this is all really what I'm talking about through this week. It's kind of linked to what I call the value formula, because ultimately, when we are in our online meetings for either as educators, as salespeople, as communicators, whatever it is that we're doing, as I said earlier, we've got some value that we're wanting to impart. And so what we're trying to do here is just get the tech out of the way to allow us to do that. And the formula that I sort of came up with, because you've got to have an acronym for these things, is the value formula. And the V is for video, the A is for audio, and the L is for lighting, the three core concepts that we're talking about today and then also tomorrow. But there's two other aspects to it, which is the understanding and the execution. And the understanding is about really more than just understanding how to use the tech and the tools, is actually understanding what's possible. And I hope that as we go further into the week, rather than just covering the sort of basics of audio and lighting and so on, really sort of unlocking some ideas of things that you can do that are a little bit more than just having a good quality image and video. So I hope to give you some more of that information as we go through the week. The execution part, well, that just comes down to actually getting out there and putting it into practice. I hope you found this useful. This is just day one. We'll be continuing tomorrow. If you want to connect with me, you can find the links for how to do that. I've got a channel, Take One Tech. You can find me at takeonetech.io and on all the platforms as Take One Tech as well. I look forward to seeing you on later on in the week. If nobody's got any further questions, then I'll wrap it up there. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Great to see a global audience. And right now, it's about past my bedtime. So I'll see you all the same time tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.